Welcome back to another iDoctor UK video. In this video, I'm going to show you step-by-step instructions on how to replace the screen on the iPhone XS Max. To begin, remove the two pentalobe screws from the bottom of the device. Keep these safe for later, as well as the rest of the screws that we removed during this teardown, because we will need them for reinstallation. Take a single-sided razor blade and create a small gap between the bezel of the screen and the chassis of the device, and then pry upwards to create a larger gap, just big enough to fit in one of our guitar picks like that, and then begin running it along the edge. As you can see, this one has been replaced before and it's quite easy to remove this screen. However, you might have to use a little bit more force than I am to slide it up through the edge there to separate it from the right hand edge. Do the same along the bottom edge, and then the same on this right hand edge, working your way upwards just like that. Don't worry too much about this edge, because we're going to lift it up from the bottom, wiggle it around a little bit, and then open it just like opening the book from a back cover. Once you've got the device open, it's a good idea to use something like a mug to prop the screen up so that you've got two hands free to work on the rest of the device. Now we need to remove these three screws that hold down the shield for the digitizer. I think all the screws that we're going to remove today will be the tri-wing screws, so you'll just need one Y000 screwdriver to complete this. Once those three screws are removed, you can now remove that shield. Leave the connector connected for now, because we're going to move further up and remove the four tri-wing screws that hold down this other shield. It'd be a good idea to lay these out in the order that you remove them, because they are different sizes and need to go back into the hole that they were removed from. There is another screw there, but on my one it's missing. We'll replace that later. But for now, we'll just lift up the shield with our tweezers, revealing the battery connector, screen connector, and the ear speaker flex cable that we need to remove. First, we need to disconnect power from the device. So using a plastic spudger tool, disconnect the battery and make sure that it's not making any connection down there. Then using the same spudger, lift up the digitizer connector for the touch, the OLED display connector just here, and then finally the ear speaker and front sensor flex just here. Now we're going to lift up this flex cable. Be careful when you're peeling this off, because there is some adhesive just where my finger is there. Just peel it gently and it will come away. If you want to use heat, you can, but this one has come away quite easily. With those three cables released, we can now take the screen away from the device and set the chassis down for preparation later, and concentrate on removing this flex cable from the back of the screen. So we're going to go again with the tri-wing screwdriver Y000 and remove the three screws that hold down this ear speaker. And then with those removed, we can unfold this one. And if it's the original screen that you're using, you'll find that these sensors here are stuck down quite well. So I would advise using something like a hairdryer to warm it up to soften the adhesive first. I've got a heat gun at 200 degrees C, and we just warm it up to soften the adhesive, just enough so that we can get the tweezers, first of all, underneath the proximity sensor here. Then we lift the ambient light sensor, and then the microphone. That will release this flex cable. It's important to note as well that any damage to this flex cable may cause problems with Face ID, so be very careful when you're removing this. This old screen can now be discarded. To clean up the chassis, we're going to use a little brush like this one and just begin removing all the dirt, dust and grime that's left over. I can't imagine the device that you're working on will be as filthy as this one. It's evident that the seal was not replaced the last time that this screen had been replaced, so there's no leftover seal, just lots of dust. Just take some fine tweezers, lift it up and peel away that old adhesive. Now, just to make sure that I've got it as clean as I possibly can, I'm going to go with some isopropyl alcohol, soak all the edges of the device. Just be careful when you're brushing around the front camera and sensor area, because if you knock that or damage it, it could break the Face ID function. I'm just going to try and clean it up a little bit more as well, because it is supremely dirty. The new screen that I'll be using is one of these TX Pro XS Max aftermarket soft OLED screens, and it comes looking like this. Remove any films that are on the back of the display, because there's nothing worse than opening up a phone that's been repaired before and seeing the amateur work of somebody else leaving these films behind. We just need to realign sensors into the little plastic holder there. Make sure that they sit completely flat. If they don't, you'll have trouble later getting the screws to sit in. But you want to make sure that the ambient light sensor goes in first. That acts as a sort of guide to help the proximity sensor go in, and that'll need to sit flat as well, just like that. You can see I'm using the tweezers here just to make sure that it's lined up and pushed down properly. Once that's in, we're going to fold over this ear speaker and then take those 3 tri-wing screws, the larger of which is the bottom right. I think the top right is a similar size screw. And then the smaller of the 3 goes just here. Now that the screen's ready, we can start installing it back onto the chassis. It's very important to reseal these devices, otherwise you end up with a load of dust in there, just like we saw before. And most of the screens should come with a replacement adhesive seal like this one. Line it up first in the top corner and then carefully line up this edge here, followed by the rest of the seal. Once it's secured down, we can use the back edge of the spudger just to make sure that it sits completely flush with the device. And then we're going to peel off the top layer of the film. It didn't quite sit down properly just in this top part here, so we're just going to go back with the spudger again and realign that, making sure that it's all stuck down all the way around. Now I found the best technique to reconnect these connectors is to carefully offer up the screen using the display connector first, push down to make sure that it's secured properly. Then we're going to reattach the digitizer connector, which is the touchscreen connector. Make sure that that's stuck down securely. And then in terms of this one, it probably helps to get the tweezers just to help you guide it into that gap between the battery and the motherboard, and then reconnect it with your finger to make sure that it's secure. Finally, resecure the battery into its correct connector, and then this is now ready to test. So for the sake of the video, I'm going to skip past the testing part and just continue with reassembling this device, starting with this shield here and then securing it down with the 3 tri-wing screws that hold this guy down. Don't forget, if you like repair content just like this, make sure that you subscribe, and if you're having a go at the repair yourself, drop me a comment below and let me know how you get on. With those 3 screws re-secured, we're going to move up to this top shield now, and we're just going to line it up with the screw holes on the motherboard. And then it's always a good idea to start with the longer of the screws and get those in first. So the longest one in our case is the middle one just here. Get that in place and secured down, and then you've just got the 3 slightly smaller screws to secure into place here. And then the one what was missing before is this one just here. Now that those shields are secured down, I'm just going to wipe off the dust that remains on these, and then we need to peel off the final layer of this film. Use your tweezers to help you, and if it peels up a little bit, just push it down in front of where you're working. Peel off the film and then line it up. If it does lift up, realign it onto the edge of the chassis there, and then continue with each piece of the film. Peel it away, fold down the screen, and then peel the other side of the adhesive off now. And then to re-secure the screen to the chassis, we're going to realign the top of the display first, make sure that that's sat in nice and flush, and then work your way down, re-securing the screen into the chassis on both sides. It should click nicely into place, and that's when you know that it's secured well. Now finally, reinstall those 2 bottom screws using the pentalobe screwdriver. And now all that remains to do is to plug the device in. I always recommend plugging it in to turn it on after the battery's been disconnected, because you might scare yourself when the power button doesn't always work first time. And as you can see, we've got display, we should have touch, and that just about completes this video. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.